Welcome to the Research Workshop series, Translating Searches for Systematic Reviews. My name is Stephanie Henderson, and I'm the Nursing Liaison Librarian in the Medical Center Library. Our agenda for today is to go over the translating process and how to select other databases for your systematic reviews. And then I'm going to demonstrate some of the basic steps to translate or build your search in CINAHL, PsycInfo, and SCOPUS. Some other upcoming workshops that we have in this series is there's an advanced CINAHL searching training on November the 6th. We have a publishing and sharing in the health sciences coming up on November the 10th, finding public health statistics on November the 17th, and then we have an EndNote drop-in session on November the 23rd and December the 9th. And then we also have the new PubMed for systematic reviews on December the 4th. You can also look at our research guide. I have it linked here, and we'll be distributing the slides after this session so you can see what other, you can actually access the recordings of the presentations and any materials, and you can also register for any additional workshops. So to get started, this is kind of a refresher of what literature searching is. So we, in the previous introduction to systematic reviews, we talked about how you need to search comprehensively, how you need to have a PICO-based search strategy, how you need to use terminology that's text-based, keywords, and controlled vocabulary terms. We talked about the initial searches need to be more sensitive than specific. And we also talked about searching for gray literature and searching for unpublished studies. So this is just kind of a little bit of a refresher. And then what databases should you be searching? So in order to reduce the bias, multiple databases must be searched. So remember, we always search PubMed, and then we also need to have a minimum of 2 to 3 other databases for every systematic review. And this is also for every kind of large literature review project. You don't want to just search one database. So other databases, how do you determine what those are? Well, you take a look at your topic and your discipline. And then 1 to 2 other gray literature sources can typically be searched. Gray literature is things like unpublished studies, clinical trials, conference proceedings. And then you can also hand search or cited reference search. So the studies that are included, you want to take a look at the references in those articles to make sure that you didn't miss any. So we want to talk a little bit about databases. Let's talk about platform and database for a minute, because people get confused about what is a platform and what is a database. So EBSCO is a platform, PubMed is a platform, and it has an asterisk, so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Ovid is a platform, ProQuest is a platform, Wiley and Web of Science are both platforms. So a platform is what vendors provide for database content. So our databases are Medline, PubMed, CINAHL, PsycInfo, SCOPUS, and Embase. Those are just a few examples. So for example, Medline can be, Medline is a database that is included in the platforms EBSCO, PubMed, Ovid, and ProQuest. So you can have a database inside of a platform, and you can have multiple platforms that have the same database. So PubMed I have as an asterisk because PubMed is a platform for Medline. However, PubMed is its own database because it also has content in addition to Medline. So there is there's books in PubMed. There is PubMed Central, which includes the open access articles. There's also non-indexed Medline, non-Medline indexed journals as well. So it's really important to understand the difference, because when you're reading a systematic review, you may see that they searched PubMed Ovid, or they may search Medline Ovid, and the way that you search Medline Ovid is completely different than the way that you search Medline through PubMed. So you have to be aware of the platform and the database that's used. And this is for reproducibility of the systematic reviews. And it's also, you need to know this for when you're writing up the methodology section of your systematic reviews. And so to just kind of further demonstrate the difference between PubMed and Medline through EBSCO, I have a screenshot here. On the left, we did a title search for the word COVID in PubMed, and we got 48,771 results. Okay, that same search, COVID, in the title of the EBSCO Medline was 1,075 results. So you're going to get a huge variation in the number of results. And again, that is because PubMed is searching Medline and then all of the other sources. It is also searching the non-indexed, like the preprints and the articles that don't have mesh headings. And so in Medline, you're only going to get whatever is indexed with mesh headings, and you're going to get some preprint information, but not nearly as much as you're going to get with PubMed. So we highly recommend that you start with PubMed. We do not recommend that you search Medline through EBSCO. We also do not recommend that you combine EBSCO databases. So a lot of times people will come to us and they'll say, so I did a search in EBSCO and I chose Medline, I chose CINAHL, and I chose PsycInfo. And we tell them, no, that's not the proper way to do it. You have to redo your search, because each and every one of those databases, they all have their own subject terms or thesaurus. And so you have to search each of those separately. You cannot combine them all into one search. So again, this is why systematic reviews take so long to do. This is why the searching process is a little bit complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you today how you can take a PubMed search and translate it into a CINAHL, PsycInfo, and SCOPUS search. Right. Sorry about that. I flipped a couple of my slides. But let's go to databases by subject. So we all know that medical health information, you would search PubMed. When you're choosing your databases, you always want to search PubMed. So if you're doing a Cochrane systematic review, the Cochrane guidelines say that you also search Embase. Embase is not a database that we subscribe to, but if you're doing a Cochrane systematic review, you would want to get either a trial of Embase, or you would want to work with a colleague at another university that does have access. In the nursing and allied health field, you would search CINAHL. If your topic is education related, you're going to search ERIC or ProQuest Education Database. Psychology, you would search PsycInfo. Agriculture, Agricula. Science or conference proceedings, Web of Science and Scopus are very good. And then if you do have questions, if you're not sure which database you should be searching, you can always ask a librarian to help you decide. And then there's a listing of all of our databases on the Medical Center Library's website, and I'll show you that when I get to it. So some things to consider when you're translating searches from PubMed to other databases. You want to replicate the PubMed search as close as possible, because you are trying to take your PubMed search and translate it into the other databases. So you don't want to put arbitrary words that you didn't use in PubMed in your search in the other databases. So you want to make sure that you're doing it as closely to the PubMed search as possible. You also want to consider, does that database have controlled vocabulary? So we're going to take, and we'll show you this in a minute, we will take our mesh terms and then we will match them to the controlled vocabulary in our other databases. You remember our mesh terms are our subject headings for PubMed. And so then the other databases have their own subject headings. So CINAHL has CINAHL subject headings, PsycInfo has the thesaurus, and other databases have different control vocabulary as well. Some databases like Web of Science and Scopus don't have controlled vocabulary. And so that's, we'll talk about how you translate the search when there's no controlled vocabulary. And then you need to consider, does the search have, does the database have a special search syntax? So does it use an asterisk or a question mark for truncation? Does it use quotation marks or curly brackets for phrases? And so these kind of questions you have to consider, and you have to account for them when you're translating the search. Use the database's help feature to help you in this process. So there's always a help feature in every database, and that is how you can determine, what is the search syntax, what should I be using? And then one other thing to consider is all of the databases have like My Accounts, or the equivalent of a My NCBI account. EBSCO has, like, I think it's called a My EBSCO account. Web of Science and Scopus, they have their own accounts. So you want to create counts in each of those platforms so that you can save your searches, and then so you can create search alerts so that you can be updated when new articles come in related to your search. So again, with the systematic review, you start the search at some point in the systematic review process. And as you go along and you do your screening and you do your full text screening and you do your data extraction and your evaluation, then you have to update the search. And that can be months down the road. So you can update the search so that you can include any of those articles that have been published since. So it's really important to create those search alerts on the platform, or you have to make sure that you know when you ran the search, and then when you need to rerun the search, you have to keep those dates in mind. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start with a PubMed search. So this is the search that I have for my example. It's about heart rate variability and suicide. And so if you take a look at the this search, we can see a couple of different things. And when you are translating, you always want to start with your PubMed search. So here's my PubMed search, and we have heart rate variability, and then this TIAB. That is the same thing as title abstract, which is written out here for you, title abstract or TIAB. They're both of the same thing, and these are our field codes. So what field codes do we use? Heart rate has an asterisk, and I'll get to that in a minute. We have heart rate as a mesh term. So this is our controlled vocabulary term. And then we have some other terms as well for heart rate. And then we go to suicide. So we have this term suicide, and we have it as a mesh term, no explosion. So no EXP means no explosion. So in this particular instance, and I'll show you in the mesh tree in a minute in a couple of slides, the researchers decided not to explode the terms for under explode the tree. It would include the terms below it, below the word suicide in the tree. And there was a reason for that. There was one term they didn't want to include. So we had to include these other terms below the tree. So suicidal ideation, suicide attempted, suicide completed. And then we have our or assisted or suicide with the truncated in the TIAB, which is the title abstract. So this is a pretty, I would consider this one a very simple search. It's not very complicated. There's not a whole lot of parts that you need to translate. It's not a very long search, but I think it's a really good example for showing kind of these decisions that you need to take into account. So again, just a refresher. So heart rate asterisk, the little asterisk is a truncation. It will search for heart rate or heart rates. Heart rate variability will search for heart rate variabilities or heart rate variability. And then suicide with an asterisk after the T, it will search for suicide, suicides, and suicidal. So you need to consider where the truncation goes. You would have decided this through the PubMed search. When you were creating your PubMed search, you probably tested all of these out. So we don't really have to decide this part for when we're translating. So just kind of want to point that out. And so then suicide mesh no explosion. Why did we use the mesh no explosion? So in this suicide, this is the mesh tree for suicide. We have suicide, and underneath the tree, which is all these terms indented: suicidal ideation, suicide attempt assisted, suicide attempted, and suicide completed. So the researchers decided that they did not want to use the suicide assisted. So what we did is we decided to use the mesh no explosion, and then we also searched for the terms suicidal ideation, suicide attempted, and suicide completed separately. So another refresher, if you remember your mesh trees and your rules for mesh in PubMed, mesh trees are automatically exploded. So if you search for suicide mesh and you didn't include this no explosion, it's going to search for all of these terms below it. Okay. Other databases like CINAHL do not include the explosion automatically. That's important to remember. It's also important to remember what you. So we want to explode suicide. So this is the reason that we didn't want the assisted suicide. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint and go to the demonstration. Okay, so here we're at the Medical Center Library's homepage. We can go to this databases, and then you can browse a database by keyword. This is some selected databases for the Medical Center Library. Here are some. If you want to know all databases, if you like, you can type or you can look at a research guide and find databases subject. But again, if you have questions, please email the McLib account. It's mclib. Whoa, sorry about that. mclib@uky.edu for suggestions for which databases to search. We typically always search also Cochrane when we're doing systematic reviews. We'll also search Cochrane Library to make sure that we're not missing anything. All right, so let's go to CINAHL. So we're going to start our translation in CINAHL. Okay, so once you're in CINAHL, the very first thing that you do, the very first thing that I always recommend people do, is you take your mesh term. So our mesh term was heart rate, and also it was suicide. So we take our first string, we take our first mesh term, and we see if there's an equivalent CINAHL subject heading. So CINAHL subject headings are the mesh terms. They're the equivalent of a mesh term in CINAHL. So we're going to click CINAHL and we're going to search for heart rate. So we'll just search for the exact term that we used in mesh. And so in this case, this is our term heart rate. I also see that heart rate variability is a term. So in a heart rate variability is something that we're looking at, and it is it was not a mesh term in PubMed, but we used it in the title abstract of PubMed. So I would definitely want to include heart rate variability as a subject heading in CINAHL. One thing that you can also do is you can click the scope note, so you can see this is the definition of heart rate according to CINAHL. So in this database, this definition is what they use to index articles with this subject term. So the number of contractions of the cardiac ventricles per unit of time. So I definitely want that term, and I definitely want heart rate variability. But I also want to click this heart rate link to see my CINAHL tree. So you can see here heart rate underneath this, it's very similar to the mesh tree. So underneath heart rate is heart rate fetal, it's indented, but I don't want that. And again, CINAHL does not automatically explode. So if I wanted it, I would need to check the boxes, both of the boxes, but I don't want it. So I'm just not going to check that one. So I have heart rate. You could also go over here and where it says explode, this is the definition of explode. Anytime you see a question mark, you're also going to get the subject headings, the help section of the database. So, so heart rate, and then I don't want it as a major concept. So I have heart rate, so I'm going to go back to my term list, and then I'm going to click on heart rate variability. Heart rate variability. I have heart rate because our mesh term was heart rate, and so I'm trying to translate the search as close as possible to the original PubMed search. And then I have heart rate variability because it wasn't a mesh term, but it is a CINAHL subject heading. So I want to include that because I'm really looking at heart rate variability, and I had heart rate variability as a keyword in my mesh search strategy or in my PubMed search strategy. So I'm going to search the database. Okay, so with these two subject terms, I have so many results, about 32,000. I'm going to clear this. So now I'm going to start putting in my terms, my title abstract terms. So I'm going to open up my cheat sheet here. And so heart rate, title abstract, and mesh are in PubMed. Let me copy this. I'm going to have to do a little bit of editing. So I just went to heart rate. All right, so whenever you do a field code in PubMed, it automatically, if there's two words, it's automatically going to search for that as a phrase. Putting a field code in PubMed next to two words or three words automatically makes it a phrase. In CINAHL, you need to put quotation marks around it to make it a phrase. If you need help, the database help feature is right here, and this is where you would look up special instructions for searching syntax or any kind of database help tips. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to put or. So again, I am building my search strategy using the or exactly like I did my PubMed one. Because there is no combined title abstract field code in CINAHL, I have to search for the title or the abstract, and I have to search for the same phrase or wording. And so I'm going to or that. Okay, so now I'm just going to build my search. So I'm going to or the next term. So I have my quotes, I have my truncation, I have everything in place. I have my field as title. And then I need to add another field. So if you just click this plus button, this will add fields. And this is really important to remember. You can only add 12 fields. So you actually add 11. There's one already here, and then you need to add the 12 more. So you can have up to 12 fields available, and then it won't let you do anymore. So these are all ors. So I'm going to make sure that I have all my ors, and then I'm going to have my abstract, and then I'm going to do the same search. So title, abstract. And so you can then just heart rate mesh. So that's my mesh term. I've already done my mesh terms. So pulse rate. And again, because pulse rate is, because of the title, abstract, and PubMed, it's automatically going to search for it as a phrase. So I'm going to have to put quotation marks around it in CINAHL. And then cardiac. Sorry, bear with me just while I build this search. Okay. So I ended up, I don't need these extra boxes, but I do need to select my title and abstract. Title, abstract, title, abstract. Okay. So now I have, you also, you'll just want to double check, make sure that you did all the terms, make sure that you put it as closely as you could get your PubMed search to your CINAHL search. Make sure you change your field codes to title, abstract. Make sure that you have ORs all through here. So then we can just click search. And then we'll clear this. So I don't have to worry about it saving it right now. If you are working and then you leave and you go maybe take, go get a lunch or something and come back, EBSCO will definitely time out on you. So you have to make sure that you save your searches. So if we go down here to our search history and we open this little caret up, you can see that this is my search history. So I have my heart rate terms, my mesh terms, or my CINAHL subject heading terms, and my title abstract terms. I can actually go ahead and combine those with OR, because that is what I'm combining all of those terms for the concept of heart rate variability. And so now I want to search my CINAHL headings for my suicide concept. So let's see what we have for suicide. So we have suicide, suicide assisted, suicide attempted, suicidal ideation. Okay, so I know that I don't want assisted suicide, but let me take a look at just suicide. And again, opening the link, the hyperlink, will give you a little bit more information. So again, you can see right here, the scope note is the intentional act of killing oneself. So suicide is also suicidal ideation, assisted, and attempted is included below our tree. And again, we are not going to explode it because we don't want assisted. So we're going to search for suicide, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempted. There is no suicide completed. Like we had a mesh term for suicide completed. There's not an equivalent CINAHL subject heading for suicide completed. So we can only search for these three. So I'm going to go ahead and search the database. Okay, and then I'm going to clear it. You always have to remember to clear your search. And then, so now I'm going to, so I have the suicide completed. So suicide asterisk for my title abstract. So I already have all of these mesh terms. So I've already done the equivalent CINAHL headings. So now I can just do suicide. And so when you, let me see, let me go ahead and get everything ready. So when I search for suicide, it's going to search suicide, suicide, suicidal. And then if that term is, if the term suicide completed is in the title or abstract, it's automatically going to pick it up because I have the term, this truncated suicide anyway. So I don't even have to worry about adding those additional like attempted or ideation. I don't have to do that because I already have my suicide term, my suicide truncated. So I'm going to go ahead and search the database for this. And once you open your search history, it stays open, which is nice, I think. So again, we're going to clear our fields. So we're going to OR these two together, or our subject terms and our title abstract terms. And then we're going to clear this. So we got to make sure we clear it. And so now we're going to and. So we have this or, like our heart rate variability search, and then our suicide search, the completed ones. And we're going to and those two together. So we're going to search those with and. And so our final result is that we have 48 results when we combine those two terms. So again, I want to clear this. I want to save my search. I might also want to print it. You can just print it to the PDF to save it so that I can remember, all of the terms that I use. This is also something that you might want to do. You can copy and paste this into a Excel spreadsheet if you document your searches, which is a good practice that we all should be doing. So then I'm going to click the Save Searches alerts. And then you have to sign into your account. If you don't have one, you can sign up for one. And of course, I used the wrong username. This is typical of me. All right, and so you want to give your name a pretty good name. So I'm going to do research workshop series and all suicide HBR example. And then I want, that's pretty good. I don't need a description. I created it on this day. It's in this database and all with full text. I'm going to save it as a permanent search. And then, or you can save it, you can save an alert. So if you save an alert, you can get it once a month, bi-weekly, once a week. You can, any limit to the number. You can run the alert for 1 year, 1 month, 2 months, however long. You can do a detailed record. You can do a bibliographic manager record. So you can have an EndNote file. So again, you have all these options for you. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to save it as a permanent search. I would also recommend creating the alert as well. And so then you can continue. So now I have my results for CINAHL. And let's go back here. And so I have my 48 results. Let's view the results. And scroll down here. And then if you want to select share, you can email a link to be emailed a link with the downloaded exported results. That's what I would recommend that you do. And then you can choose a RS format. So I would choose this one for EndNote. And then you can have an EndNote RS file emailed to you with all the results of your CINAHL search, then to be uploaded into your EndNote account. So that is kind of how you take the translated search all the way through the whole process and export the results into EndNote. So I honestly didn't think that it would take that much time to show you this, but I will quickly show you. Let me go to MedCenter. In Psych Info, I just kind of want to show you a couple of things. So you would do this whole process all over again for Psych Info. So in Psych Info, we have our APA, thesaurus of psychological terms. And so if we search for suicide, we browse. So there's suicidology, there's suicide, there's attempted suicide. So you would need to look at these terms, and then you would need to decide which term do I want. And in this case, PsycInfo does a broader term, self-destructive behavior, and then they do narrower terms. So attempted suicide, suicidality. So I would probably search this one, and this one. And then I would add it to my search, and then I would click search. And then I would clear it because I'm in an EBSCO database, so it kind of does the same thing. And so then I would do title, and then we'd go down to abstract, and I would do suicide, and I would OR it. So again, we're doing the same process, but we're making sure that we're matching our mesh terms, the mesh terms that we used in PubMed with whatever term is equivalent in our CINAHL and in PsycInfo. So this is kind of how the same way that we structured the CINAHL search, you would do the same thing in PsycInfo. And so we'd again search heart rate, we go through this whole process. Now, if we are doing a search in SCOPUS, for example, SCOPUS does not have subject headings. So we'll go to SCOPUS. And the only thing that we can search for in SCOPUS is this article title, abstract, and keywords. So this is our equivalent. So this is why we have really good keywords, and this is why we have really good keywords in our title abstracts terms for like our PubMed search. It's also because this is what you would use. So we have suicide. So that would be my term for my suicide string. So then I would click search. And then I would go back to search. And then I would go back to my Word document, and I would just do my heart rate string. So heart rate. Again, I want it to be as close as possible to my my original search. So then I would look in this search tips. So if quotation marks are used for a phrase, I just want to make sure that that's true. So let me look at my search tips. So how do I search for plural possessive? I'm pretty sure that it's truncation. Oh, no, that's not what I'm looking for. Sorry. Yes, so there's two ways to search for phrases or words. There's loose approximate or there's exact. So I want exact because that's what I used in CINAHL and in PubMed and in PsycInfo. So you use curly brackets. So these curly brackets will search for an exact phrase. So let's go back. Let's see. Sorry, I've got to move my bar. There we go. So I don't want double brackets because that searches for it loosely. I want curly brackets. So that searches for it as an exact phrase. And so then I'm going to add another row. I'm going to select or, and I'm going to do heart rate variability. And again, so what I'm doing is I'm searching all of the terms that I used in my in my title abstract in my PubMed search. So I'm going to use all of those terms for my SCOPUS search. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a few of them and then I'll show you how to combine in SCOPUS because it's a little bit different from some of the other databases. Okay, so I have heart rate variability, pulse control, or pulse rate. And so again, totally you would do every single one, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. So we're going to click search. And again, SCOPUS does not have a subject thesaurus or subject headings. So you want to make sure that you're using your title abstracts, and then you may want to make sure that you're using the correct search syntax. So if you search for an exact phrase in PubMed, you want to search for an exact phrase in SCOPUS. If you search for a loose phrase, you want to search for a loose phrase in SCOPUS. You need to make sure, use the little help feature to make sure that all of your syntax is correct. So this is really interesting. So let me go back and go back to my search. And if I combine these queries, I believe that this is not right. I'm looking at it and it doesn't look right because I only got 5 results. So I believe that something was wrong, but let's combine them. So you can see that you have your search history. Then you combine the queries by, using this example, number 1 and number 2, and then you click search. And then no documents were found. So I believe that the curly brackets and the truncation is throwing the search off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search again. And I'm going to edit this search. I can use my little edit function. And I'm going to put quotation marks. This is, if your search does something wonky and it doesn't look right, you want to go back, read your documentation, make sure that you did it correctly, and change your search based upon that, what you read. So let's go back. Yeah, this looks more like it. So I have 361,000 results. So let's go back to my search. And so I'm going to combine the queries, the suicide query and the heart rate variability, number 1 and number 4, and then search. And so now I have 906. So that looks about right. I didn't have that many whenever I searched in CINAHL or PsycInfo or PubMed. So I might want to do a little bit of tweaking to this search. So again, Scopus and Web of Science do not have the subject headings. So you kind of have to be careful when you're translating into these databases. So for my example, I think I want to go back and make sure that I'm putting in all my terms correctly, that I'm putting my asterisks and truncation in the right spot, make sure that Scopus uses an asterisk for truncation, and make sure that you can use truncation with curly brackets or with double quotes, because there are some variabilities in the rules of the databases and how they search for terms. So again, I would want to, double check all of this um, if I'm not getting results that don't seem right. So if you do have questions, let me go back to our Med Center homepage. If you have questions about the systematic review process or translating searches, we would be happy to assist you. You can always contact the NICLIB email at mclib@uky.edu for assistance with translating PubMed searches into the other databases, or even with recommendations on how what databases to use, or help with your PubMed search. So if you all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I hope you'll join us for our next session on CINAHL advanced searching.